Week 10 of the fantasy baseball season, and he has a few batters on the rise this week. The first guy is Carlos Correa of the Houston Astros. So Correa, he got off to a slow start earlier in the season, but right now, with a contract season pending here, he's been hitting the ball well, and he's been hot on the season. 11 home runs, 34 RBIs, 41 runs scored, a 290 batting average, and a 375 on base in the last couple weeks here for Correa. He's ranked number 1 in fantasy baseball, 4 home runs, 11 RBIs, 12 runs scored, a 381 batting average, and a 527 on base percentage here. So Correa, he's driving the ball, he's showing power, and obviously he wants that $200 million contract here in the offseason in the last few games here for Correa. June 4th at Toronto, 2 for 5, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, 2 runs scored. June 5th at Toronto, 3 for 4. June 6th at Toronto, 0 for 4. June 8th at Boston, 3 for 5, a homer, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. June 9th at Boston, 2 for 5 with 2 runs. So he's going out there. He's getting a lot of multiple hit games here, is Carlos Correa, and he's showing power, and he wants the big deal here this offseason. And for fantasy owners who took him in the 8th to the 10th round, he's paying great dividends for their fantasy rosters the last couple weeks here. The next hit is Jonathan Schoop of the Detroit Tigers. So Schoop, we know he's a guy bound to hit for some home run power and get into hot streaks throughout the season. And on the season here, 9 home runs, 28 RBIs, 23 runs scored, a 257 batting average, and a 307 on base in the last couple weeks here for Schoop. 7 home runs already, 14 RBIs, 9 runs scored, a 408 batting average, and a 474 on base percentage. So Schoop, he's got most of his homers here in the last 2 weeks of the season, 7 out of the 10 in the last few games for Schoop. First at Milwaukee, 3 for 5, 2 homers, 3 RBIs. June 3rd at the White Sox, 0 for 4. June 4th at the White Sox, 4 for 4, 2 homers, 5 RBIs. June 5th at the White Sox, 0 for 3. June 6th at the White Sox, 1 for 4. June 8th versus Seattle, 1 for 4 with a ribby. June 9th versus Seattle, 1 for 4 with a ribby. And June 10th versus Seattle, 3 for 4 with a homer and an RBI. So Schoop, he's driving the ball. He's got a few multiple hit games in the last 10 days here, and he's definitely a hitter on the rise this week. The next hitter is Wisdom of the Chicago Cubs. So Wisdom, he's came out of nowhere since getting called up for this Cub team over the last couple weeks here. And on the season, 8 home runs already, 12 RBIs, 11 runs scored, stolen base, a 364 batting average, and a 417 on base percentage in only 44 at-bats. So right here, he's been a great find here from the Cubs farm system, and a great find for fantasy owners. He already been added in 36% of fantasy leagues in just this week alone here, and they're finding a position for him each and every day. He's batting 3rd to 5th in the Chicago Cub lineup, and they got to keep that bat in the lineup here. So the last few games here for Wisdom: June 4th at San Francisco, 1 for 3 with a run. June 5th at San Francisco, 1 for 3, a homer, 2 RBIs. June 6th at Frisco, 2 for 4, 2 homers, 3 RBIs, 2 runs. June 7th at San Diego, 0 for 2 with a run. June 8th at San Diego, 1 for 4, a homer, 2 RBIs, and a run. And June 9th at the Padres, 1 for 4. So right here, he's on a power trip right now with Wisdom. And if he's still out there as well in your fantasy league, you better go out there and gobble him up, because right now he's one of the best players in all of fantasy baseball since he got called up, and he's definitely on the rise here this week. The next hitter is Tai ONeal of the St. Louis Cardinals. So ONeal here, it's been a breakout season for him finally, the former top prospect here in the St. Louis Cardinal farm system. So on the season already, 15 home runs, 32 RBIs, a 29 runs scored, 5 stolen bases, 291 batting average, a 325 on base. So he's doing it all here right now in his ONeal. In the last couple weeks here for him, 7 homers, 14 RBIs, 13 runs scored, a stolen base, a 373 batting average, and a 396 on base. So the only downfall for me here with ONeal, he's just getting hits and getting on base, and he's not really drawing walks at all here, or reaching on fielder's choices or hit by a pitch. But besides that, he's showing big power. He's a force, obviously, in this St. Louis Cardinal lineup, batting 5th to 6th. And not many pitchers are going to pitch around them, obviously, with Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt here in this Cardinal lineup. So right now, no eyes are on him, and he's going out there each and every day and producing big numbers here for the Cardinals and fantasy owners in the last few games for him. June 3rd versus Cincy, 1 for 4 with a run and an RBI. June 4th versus Cincy, 0 for 3 with a run. June 5th versus Cincy, 2 for 4. June 6th versus Cincy, 1 for 5, a home and 2 RBIs. June 8th versus Cleveland, 1 for 3 with a run. And then June 9th versus Cleveland, 3 for 4, 2 home runs, 3 RBIs, and 3 runs scored. So right here, O'Neill, he's driving the baseball like I mentioned. 15 home runs. He's up there in the top 10 in the leaderboards in the major leagues in homer. And he's definitely on the rise this week. And the fifth and final hitter on the rise is Pete Alonso of the New York Mets. Pete Alonso, he was on the injured list for about 2 weeks here with a wrist injury, but he's came back and he's played pretty well. So on the season for the Polar Bear, 10 home runs, 31 RBIs, 30 runs scored, a 265 batting average, and a 349 on base. But the last couple weeks since he returned to the Mets lineup, 4 home runs, 12 RBIs, 9 runs scored, a 371 batting average, and a 405 on base. So right now he's finally finding the power, is Alonso. And I know most of his homers in the last week or two here have come in Camden Yards, a small hitters ballpark here, and a great hitters ballpark at that in Baltimore. But hey, he went out there and he got the job done. So the last few games here for Alonso: June 4th at San Diego, 1 for 4. June 5th at the Padres, 1 for 5. June 6th at the Padres, 1 for 3 with a run and an RBI. June 8th at Baltimore, 2 for 4, 2 homers, 3 RBIs. And then at Baltimore, June 9th, 3 for 5, a homer, 3 RBIs, and 3 runs scored. So Alonso here, maybe he's getting into a home run power here, which he needs, and this Met team needs. This Met team, they're one of the worst hitting home run teams in all of Major League Baseball, and we know the upside and the power of Alonso. Obviously hitting 54 home runs in his rookie season, and then last season, in a 2-month season, he had 16 home runs. So here he's at 10, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him up there at top or in the top 5 in the home run leaderboard when the season's all said and done. So that's a few hitters on the rise here in Week 10 of the fantasy baseball season.